Hi there, in this video I'm going to talk about how to solve quadratics using factorising. So prior knowledge you should have to this video is knowing a couple of basic facts about maybe the shape of a quadratic, and I've heard the word roots before. You also hopefully can remember how to factorise by a common factor, difference of two squares, and by solving trinomials. If not, you will get a wee reminder of how to do them as well. Just a wee reminder though, there are more than one way to do trinomials, so the way I do in the video might not be the way you've been shown, okay? So I've got a picture of a quadratic here. This is the quadratic of the line with this equation here. The y equals x squared plus x minus 2. Now the thing I want you to notice is your roots. Remember, your roots are the numbers it goes through on the x-axis. So we've got a root here at minus 2 and a root here at 1, okay? So the roots are x equals minus 2 and x equals 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to get those answers without a diagram at all, just by factorising. So if I go back to the equation, y equals x squared plus x plus 2, so this wee bit here. If we were to factorise the trinomial, you would be looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 2 but add to 1. Okay, so the numbers that would go in your brackets, you'd put an x and an x at the front. Two numbers that multiply to negative 2 are definitely 2 and 1. To get the number positive 1 from adding them, then it's going to have to be positive 2 and take away 1. Now if you look at the diagram, remember this root says minus 2, but we've got a plus 2 in the bracket, and this root was 1, and we've got a negative 1 in the bracket. Now as coordinates, both of these points are along something and up nothing. Do you agree? The first one is along negative 2, up 0. The second one is along 1, up 0. So your y coordinate equals 0. So y gets replaced with a 0. And then if you've got, what we're really saying is we've got two things here multiplied together giving us 0. Now, to get an answer of 0 when you're multiplying, then either the first thing is 0, or the second thing is 0, or both of them could be 0. So for example, if you had 3 times 0, that's 0. If you had 0 times 2, that's also 0. And 0 times 0 would be 0. So what we actually do is we put both of these little equations, these brackets equal to 0 as an equation. So x plus 2 equals 0. If you solve that, you get x equals minus 2. X minus 1 as an equation, bring the minus 1 over, you get x equals positive 1. And then you'll notice the minus 2 now matches up with the root, and the 1 now matches up with that root. So let's try and put down a method to explain really what we are doing. So the method is, if you're ever asked to find the roots of a quadratic or simply solve a quadratic, step 1 is you factorise it, you put it equal to 0, and then you split it into two little equations. Okay, so that's the 3 steps we're going to solve. Factorise, put our two brackets equal to 0, and then solve two little equations. That's all we're doing. Now, in an exam, when to do this method, because it says solve, and then it's got a quadratic like x squared. I'm going to a very simple one. It's got maybe a trinomial and it says equals to 0. Up until now, maybe in an exam, all you've seen is factorise the same expression, but without equals 0 on its end. So this bit here, the word solve and equals 0 means we've got this extra wee step. Factorise meant we just put that into two brackets and we stopped there. But the addition of solve and equals 0 tells us we're going to do this extra little bit. So let's look at some examples. Right, question 1. So anytime you have a quadratic, i.e. anything with an x squared in it, the first thing you look for is a common factor. Now the first one has got a 2x squared and a 6x. So in there's a common factor of 2 and x. So you do 2x bracket. 2x squared divided by 2x leaves you with x. 6x divided by 2x leaves you with a 3. And then that's equal to 0. So we've factorised. Now I know there isn't two brackets in this one, but we do have two terms. Technically, that could have a bracket around it, but we just don't always write it because it's a single term. The bracket normally comes in when there's two terms, okay? So we put this equal to 0, and we put that equal to 0. So 2 times something is 0, well that x must be 0. Common mistake there is to say x is 2. Remember you're doing 0 divided by 2, 0 divided by anything is 0. And this one, bring the positive 3 over and it becomes negative 3. So they are your roots, but that's all they've asked for. They've not asked for it as coordinates, they've just asked the roots. So the roots are at 0 and minus 3. And what actually happens here is we have a smiley face quadratic here, and it's got a root at 0. Sorry, that's a mistake. It's got a root at negative 3 and a root at 0 like that. Now, we're not asking you to sketch them. I'm just doing that as a wee added bit to show you what's actually going on there, okay? Right, the second one, let's look for common factor again. 27 and 3 both divide by 3. So we do 3 bracket, divide each thing by 7, gives you 9, take away x squared. Okay, now actually while I'm here, you might notice that bit inside the bracket is a difference of 2 squares. 9 is a squared number and x squared is a squared term. So we've got common factor, 2 brackets, square root of 9 is 3, so we've got a 3 in each bracket, 1 with a plus x, 1 with a minus x. Okay, now technically, yeah, we've got 3 things here. The 3 is just a common factor, so we could ignore it. Bring this down, put it equal to 0. Bring this down and put that equal to 0. Then if you solve each of these wee equations, that gives you x equals minus 3. I'm going to take the x over, and that gives you x equals 3, or 3 equals x, or x equals 3. So in this one, x is 3 or minus 3. And what's actually going on in that one is, again, we don't have a smiley face this time. Because we've got a negative x squared there, we've got a sad face, and it's cutting at minus 3 and 3. So that's what's going on in the diagram. Now, there was possibly another little way to factorise this bit from this step here, and I'm just going to show you that in the next slide, okay? So what happens is some people take out the common factor and they don't always notice that that bit there has a difference of 2 squares. So they bring this down and say, right, 9 minus x squared equals 0. Take the x squared over, so you've got 9 equals x squared. So x is then the square root of 9, so x equals 3. Now, roots mean that we should really have 2 answers. The only scenario where you don't get 2 different answers is when you come out with a repeated answer, and that's when it's just touching, so that's when it's only really got 1 root. Now, we have to remember that 3 times 3 is 9, but also negative 3 times negative 3 is also positive 9. So in algebra, whenever we take the square root of a number, we have to remember that there was 2 answers. So x equals plus or minus 3, that's what that says there. So you could then write, if you wanted, x equals 3, x equals minus 3. And you'll remember, if I did on the previous slide, when I did the difference of 2 squares, I came out with those 2 answers automatically. But I know from experience, you guys don't always spot the difference of 2 squares. So just be aware, we're looking for 2 answers, okay, all the time here. And if you square root a number, please remember it could have been positive or negative before it was squared, okay? Right, so my next couple are trinomials. We should recognise trinomials because there's 3 things in it. Now, the way I do this might not be the way you've been shown in class, okay? But feel free to do your own factorising. The final step will be the same as what I'm doing. So we've got 2 brackets. We're looking for numbers that multiply to minus 14. I'm just going to write it up here. Multiply to minus 14 and add to 5, okay? So first thing I do is I put an x in the front of each brackets. Numbers that multiply to 14, you've got 14 and 1, 2 and 7. 2 and 7 will work. To get 5 from 2 and 7, then it had to be a plus 7 take away 2, because 7 take away 2 is 5. From there, bring these down, put both of them equal to 0. So x take away 2 is 0, x add 7 is 0. So x is 2 and x is negative 7. This was our x squared graph, so we've got a smiley face here, and it's cutting at 2 and negative 7. Again, this isn't part of the question, it's just me kind of trying to explain what's happening, and hopefully when you do more work on roots of graphs, it might sink in a wee bit, okay? But that's what we're actually solving when we get the values 2 and negative 7. Okay, on this next one, 2 brackets again. We're looking for numbers that multiply to 49. And add to minus 14. So numbers that multiply to 49, there's really only 7 and 7. And because it's positive 49, it means that both signs are the same. But negative 14 means it had to be minus 7 minus 7. Bring those down. So x minus 7 equals 0. X minus 7 equals 0. So x is basically just 7. And I'm just going to write 7 repeated. Because, yes, I got 7 and 7. Technically, there was only one answer. And what's happening there, you might have been talked about the discriminant already. You might not have. But what happens there is that is a smiley face graph because it's x squared. And it's only really just touching here at the number 7. So that's what's happening there. So it doesn't have two roots, it just has one. But when it just has one and it's touching like that, that means it's a repeated root. And that's what the repeated answer gives us in the brackets. Okay. Next one, I'm going to show you one with a negative. Now, some teachers will teach you to factorise it with a negative in it. I personally don't, right? So what we do in this one is we pretend we're taking everything to the other side of the 0, okay? So we've got 0 equals, your x squared becomes positive, your minus 5 becomes positive, and your 24 turns into negative. So that's what we then factorise, okay? So we're looking for numbers that times to negative 24 and add to 5. So there's lots of options for 24. There is 2 and 12, 3 and 8. 3 and 8 will work. So I've got x and x. I've got a 3 and an 8. To make positive 5, it's going to have to be 8 take away 3. And then we split them up. So x equals positive 3. Sorry, I've skipped a line of work in there, sorry. X take away 3 equals 0. Take the minus 3 over and x gives us positive 3. Some of you will probably do that once you get the hang of these as well anyway. X plus 8 equals 0. Take the positive over and it becomes negative. Now this one, if you go back to the original bit in the question, it was a negative x squared. So in this one we had a sad face that was cutting at minus 8 and 3. Okay, that's what's actually happening. So example 7 here is the one where there are so many different ways to factorise this, and the way that I'm going to do it might not be the way you're taught in class, so that's something you might have to go figure out yourself or remind yourself how to do. So because it's a 2x squared in your brackets, go 2x and x. And then you're looking for numbers that multiply to minus 7 and add to minus 13. Okay, so then I go and I write down 2x and x, and I do a cross, and I play around with numbers that multiply to 7. Luckily there's only two numbers, 7 and 1, and I think it goes 1 and 7. Then you cross multiply. 2 times 7 would give you a 14x. 1 times x would give you a 1x. Now to turn that into a 13x, 14 and 1 can make 13, but it has to be a negative with the 14. So in that case the negative went with 7, the plus with the 1. And that's your two brackets. So you've got 2x plus 1 and x minus 7. Now I know a lot of times for some of my classes this year I've taught the box method. But if you have been doing the box method, there is another video I've got on that, going over that on how to do it. I also have a video on how to factorise using St Andrew's cross method, but we'll leave that for you to go do. Sorry. So then what we do from there is we then split that up into our two equations. 2x plus 1 equals 0, so 2x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 1/2. There are the odd ones we don't get nice answers. X take away 7 equals 0, move that over, so x equals 7, and there's your two answers there. And just to illustrate what's going on here, 2x squared is a smiley face quadratic, and it has roots at minus 1/2 and 7, and that's what you're doing. Okay, so I hope this video has helped. Obviously again I'll reiterate, if you've been shown different ways of factorising for maybe question 7, you have to then go remind yourself on how to do them. But thank you very much for watching. Bye.